Next, we're going to remove the 6 cylinder head bolts. And that'll allow us to remove the cylinder head, and then we'll remove the cylinder, and then we'll go take a look at the pistons. Now, as you're breaking these loose, you want to break them loose just a little bit at a time. Start with the center. Just give them a little break. So that way you're releasing the pressure on that cylinder head evenly. Now we've got all the pressure off of our bolts, then we'll just remove all 6 of them. Now we got all these bolts out of the way, we'll just give this head a little wiggle here. And we're just going to lift it clean away. There we go, 1 cylinder head. Now I'm going to remove the cylinder head gasket. And we'll discard that, we won't reuse that cylinder head gasket there. Now we're down to the cylinder itself. And this cylinder looks like it's kind of stuck on there a little bit, so I'm just going to take a composite hammer. Kind of jar it a time or two, get it loosened off of them dowels, and now we'll just lift it straight up and away. Just like that. There's your cylinder. Now you can see the pistons and the piston rings right there. Next, we're going to remove the wrist pin keepers right here on the end of the piston. So that way we can slide that wrist pin out, then we can remove the piston from the rod. Now, one of the things I like to do before I start taking those wrist pin keepers out of there, since they do have a tendency sometimes to kind of fly out of there and go flying across the shop, there's a possibility you might actually drop one down in the engine in the crankcase. So what I like to do is take me some shop towels, stuff them around those connecting rod openings just like that. That way, if we do lose that keeper, it won't go down into the motor. Well, there's a wrist pin keeper right there. Now what I had to use to remove that is I took a little pick tool, and there's a little notch cut in the side of the piston right there where the wrist pin goes in. You can get in there with that and kind of scoot the wrist pin keeper around until you get the notch in it, kind of close to the notch that's cutting that piston. Then you can reach in there with the pick tool and kind of pry it up and very carefully work it out, but kind of be sure to keep your hand over it because they do tend to kind of squirt out of there. So once you got this out of the way, then we'll reach in here and we'll push the wrist pin from the other side. It's a little tight, so I may have to take me an extension and kind of tap it through there. There it goes. And then there's our piston. All right. Now I'm not going to reuse these pistons here since that cylinder does have some signs of wear on it, and the pistons do too. I'll clean these up and I'll show you a little more detail about what kind of wear we're looking at on these things. But otherwise, if you were going to reuse the pistons, you would want to mark them for the cylinder that they came out of, and that way you can be sure and get them back in the same cylinder. Now I've got those pistons out of the way. One of the things I always like to do is I always like to kind of give the rods a quick inspection and see if they have any wear or excessive clearance on them. Now most of these connecting rods, what you can do with them is you can get it up there to where it's pretty much on top dead center, which with the angle the crank's at right now, that's pretty much at the top of the throw right there. Then what you can do is you can check them back and forth. Now that's not unusual to have a little bit of side play like that right there, but what you want to do is rock it back and forth until you get it just in the center of that side play right there, and then pull straight up and down. And if you can feel any slack at all, then most likely you have a rod bearing problem. Now these right here feel pretty good. Inspect this one right quick. Like I said, just rock it back and forth until you find that center spot. Then just pull straight up and down. I feel no slack on those whatsoever. Now the next thing we want to do is check the top end of the rod. And what we'll do for that is you just take one of the wrist pins and just slide it in there and kind of do it the same way. Just see if you can feel any slack at all. Those feel good and tight. Yeah, I don't feel any slack at all there, so these will be good to go. Now one other thing I'll show you, I normally don't remove the lifters out of one of these if I'm just doing a top end on them. Now I'll take them out right quick and just inspect the bottoms of them to make sure they don't have any wear where they run on the cam at. But what's really kind of interesting on these lifters, I'll dig one out here and show you real quick. You can kind of wipe it off here. This is one of the lifters. It looks like it's right out of a small block Chevrolet. Isn't it something? Check that out. So all you want to do is just kind of inspect the bottom of it. Make sure there's not any wear where it runs onto the cam. Just drop it right back in the same hole it came out of. And I'll go ahead and I'll inspect all four of the lifters. Make sure they all look okay. Then we'll just clean this area up and then we'll cover it back up, and then we'll be ready to reassemble it with our new parts when we get ready to put the motor back together. And we'll go on to inspect our cylinders and pistons and see what all we got there. Now I've got our new cylinder here, and to kind of show you some comparisons about how much wear we've got between our new cylinder and our old one, and also the wear of the piston rings. What I've done here is I've took the top compression ring and I've squared it up in the bore so we can measure the piston ring end gap, and that's your end gap right there. You can see that little gap right there. Now standard piston ring gap for this model is 15 to 35 hundredths of a millimeter, and I went ahead and measured this one, and it equates out to 25 hundredths of a millimeter. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and I'll set that in there so you can see that is correct. Now to kind of give you an idea of what that kind of thickness is, that's pretty much the equivalent to the thickness of a D-Ray shop business card. I'm going to slide that in there, and as you can see, there we go. Now to look at our other cylinder here, you look at the end gap on that one, and yeah, you can see it's quite a bit larger there. Now that's a combination of piston ring wear and cylinder wear. Now since these cylinders are non-boreable, they have a very thin hard facing on the inside of the cylinder lining there. It's only a few thousandths thick, so if it has any wear in it at all, it's really not advisable to try to reuse these things because it's just not going to work. So I'm just going to replace it. But I measured the end gap on that piston ring, and it equates out to almost 3.5 millimeters, which, to kind of put that in perspective, with our new one being the thickness of one business card, the end gap on this piston ring is the same thing as the thickness of 10 business cards. And to kind of show you that I'm not joking with you here, there's 10 business cards. All right, watch this. There's 10 business cards right there. Yeah, I'd say she's pretty much done. All right. Now next I'm going to go ahead and move on to cleaning up the cylinder head and all the other related components. I went ahead and removed one of the intake valves. I wanted to kind of check the valves for wear at the seat area since they've had all that dirt and grit pass through there. Looks like they're going to be just fine, but I've only removed the one here so far. Also, I'm going to decarbonize the ports on the exhaust side, and also I'm going to give, once I get the cylinder head stripped down, I'm going to give it a good cleaning on these intake ports. So you got all that residue, all that dirt and crap that's built up in there, and I want to get all that out of there. You don't want to start that up with all that in there and suck that through a freshly rebuilt engine. Also, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replace the valve guide seals on the intake valves. Now the exhaust valve guides don't have any seals on those, but we're going to disassemble this cylinder head, clean all those parts up, and then I'll show you how to put all of it back together. Right now I'm in the process of disassembling this here cylinder head, and basically all I'm going to do is just take it apart, inspect all the parts for wear, clean them up real good, and then get them ready for reassembly. And as stated before, we're going to replace the intake valve guide seals. Now one thing to keep in mind, as you're disassembling these valves, you want to be sure to put them back in the original position that they came from. So what I'm doing here is basically the cylinder head, this is the front side of it. This is where your thermostat would go. So you know this is the front side of the cylinder head. So basically I'm going to number my cylinders 1 and 2 front to rear. And as a matter of fact, I've already removed this intake valve here, so I could decarbonize it, inspect that valve seat face for any kind of wear, which that one looks real good. So I went ahead and I marked it on the inside with a Sharpie, intake number 1. That way I can be sure and get it back in its original position. So I'm going to go ahead and disassemble the remaining 3 valves, and I'm going to take them out one at a time, clean them one at a time, and then mark them and set them aside so that way we can get them in the right order. Now this is the tool that I'm using to remove my valve springs with. This is a Motion Pro valve spring compressor, model number 080247. Now you can get those online anywhere that sells motorcycle accessories and special tools. They're actually pretty inexpensive, and it's a real handy tool to have. It's got different size collets here on the end for different valve spring retainer sizes. This is a small one I'm using on the Polaris. It also has another one here that threads down that's larger, so you can thread it up out of the way when you don't need it, and it works really good. So I'm going to show you how to use this thing. Now the way this valve spring compressor works is basically it's got a little cantilever system here. And once you get these 2 ends kind of adjusted like you like them, you just move the lever over and it moves this cantilever bar over and it squeezes the valve so that you can remove the keepers. And I've kind of already got this pretty much adjusted like I want it, so I'm just going to kind of show you how it works here. The collet here goes onto the valve spring retainer, and then the little ball end here goes against the valve that you're removing, which on this one is the exhaust valve. So we're just going to place it right over the end of the retainer, get the collet kind of set in there. Then I'm going to kind of ease this lever in until it contacts the valve. Just like that, kind of get it set like you want it, just like that. Then all we got to do is just lever it on in. That squeezes that valve spring down. Now I'm going to take me a little magnet bar here, and I've got our keepers removed, just like that. And all you want to do is just kind of be careful about releasing it because you got spring pressure on this. So just release that all the way, lever it all the way back, then remove your tool. That will allow you to remove the valve spring and the retainer. Then we can just pop our exhaust valve right out. Nothing to it. Nothing to it. Now you can see on that exhaust valve there, all kinds of old carbon built up on that. I've got all the valves out of the cylinder head here, and I'm going to zoom in here and show you a little more detail here, something else you need to kind of keep an eye on. Once you remove your valves and valve springs, you've got what's called a valve spring seat on the exhaust valve. And since this head is aluminum, this is what keeps the valve spring from just kind of grinding its way down into the aluminum of the cylinder head. So be sure that you retain these and reuse them. Now over here on the intake side, the valve spring seat is actually part of the valve guide seal. So you want to remove those, and we're going to discard those. We're not going to reuse those. We've got new ones to go in place for these. But then we'll go ahead and clean and decarbonize the cylinder head and show you a couple of things to look for before we start putting it back together.